Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and opinions. Today is Wednesday, June 15th. Happy Hump Day. I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Debbie Lobo, and on today's report, a Russian court just extended the detention for WNBA star Brittany Griner. How much longer will she stay in jail? Meanwhile, racists are using Twitter to attack Vice President Kamala Harris. But what are Twitter officials doing to stop this harassment? We're going to break down Twitter's response. Then a black former Tesla worker who was awarded $15 million in a racial discrimination lawsuit has about a week left to accept the offer. We have that story.
Plus, Jennifer Hudson just became the youngest person to become winner of an elite set of Hollywood awards, and Nick Cannon is creating the perfect cocktail just in time for Father's Day. We have all that and so much more. This is Our Voice and Our Truth, so let's get it.
And we're learning that Brittany Griner will have to stay in a Russian jail for at least another 2.5 weeks. Now, Russian officials are extending her detention at least until July 2nd. The decision comes on the heels of the U.S. State Department meeting with Griner's WNBA team, the Phoenix Mercury. They met to safely talk about how to get Brittany back into the United States.
There's a lot of things involved to getting her back home and safe. So it was just nice to hear from the people at the very top, knowing that they're working relentlessly, and we're here to do whatever we can to make sure we amplify and keep BG at the forefront of the things that we want to do, which is more important than any basketball game and anything else that's going on in our lives. That BG to come home safe as soon as possible is number one on our list.
Now, following the meeting, the team had a virtual conversation with Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and Arizona Representative Greg Stanton. The House members reassured the players that they are working with the Biden administration to get Brittany out of Russia. I want to read between the lines here, and I want to say, okay, so this is the third time that they have extended her time in Russia. But I think for me, at least this time, it's 2 weeks and not 2 months, which means there's something happening behind the scenes maybe that we just don't know about. One Russian diplomat did say that Moscow would not consider a detainee swap until a court investigation into her case is complete. So at least that says that they're talking, and perhaps there is some detainee swap. That's what the records people have said off the record, that there may be some talk behind the scenes that they're going to swap her for a Russian prisoner here in the United States. But I'm happy to see that the team, the players, the staff, they're meeting with officials, and they're being encouraged to keep her voice and her name out in the public and to continue to fight and for her here at home. And the other thing that I found was really interesting is Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he met with her wife. So that's really good news as well.
That is really good. Mimi and Romeo, it's been a little bit around 118 days. She hasn't spoken to her family, friends, or her wife, only censored emails that are, of course, being watched and pulled apart. Everything that she sent is being monitored. So they're saying that this extra time is in order to gather more evidence. But people are saying, well, how much more evidence do you need? Because the only witnesses are Brittany Griner and the person who works at Customs. So those are the only witnesses. So what are other details? It seems like this is straightforward. So what other evidence do you need to get? Also, another question that was happening online today was you would think that Russia wouldn't want to endure any more bad press. But Russia is like, we're already in a sea of bad press right now. So this really doesn't affect us anymore. And so now those in America are saying, the Russia doesn't care. They don't care about how much bad press they're getting. And President Joe Biden, he's going to have to be the one to step up here because they just don't care.
Well, we're going to see what happens, because I feel like they're in the middle of a war right now, right? So this is not the first thing on their mind. Let's just be honest. And on top of that, not allow one phone call. It's pretty bad. Wasn't selling. Right? Wasn't trying to kill anyone, but yet still detaining her for so long is a problem. I do love the high spirits I see in the players and in the WNBA and across our country, hoping to get her home real soon. Some people, and I know it's not a joke, but some people are like, do we need to send Reverend Jesse Jackson over there to get her home? Because he's capable of doing that. But at some point, we're hoping that date that just said, July 2nd, I believe, that they stick to that date.
We hope so. Yeah. Now, racists are using Twitter to attack Vice President Kamala Harris, but Twitter officials are doing little to nothing to stop stop this harassment. Bot Sentinel, an internet research group, says the vice president has had more than 4,200 racist, sexist, and even sexually graphic messages sent to her. Some of these messages include death threats, and many of the tweets include the N-word. Twitter officials say the initial assessment of the tweets reported to them were incorrect, but they do admit that they have made mistakes in enforcing the platform moderation rules. So I would like to shout out Bot Sentinel, because this Bot Sentinel is really the reason why this even came to light. They've been talking about this since January. They were reaching out. A lot of black women were standing up and saying, hey, all of these people are speaking so awfully about Vice President Kamala Harris on Twitter, and Twitter is doing nothing of it. So shout out to Bot Sentinel, because they brought this to light. Because what Bot Sentinel does is they use Twitter's rules against them. They're like, okay, these are the rules. So how are people going against these rules and still being able to put these tweets? So they were able to, fire this off and get this in motion. So shout out to them.
Yeah. For me, this, though, brings a larger picture into focus. We talk a lot about the shootings that happened and how they were able to use social media. So if they're not monitoring the hate speech or the type of messages that the vice president is getting, think about all the things that are slipping through when it comes to the gunmen. We know that the Uvalde gunman shared something in a private message about 30 minutes before, and the Buffalo shooter, he did the same thing. He put his entire manifesto on there, and 30 minutes before he shared his plan. So there needs to be some sort of police that police social media, right? We've got special police force that police hip hop community and everything else. Why can't we find people who are literally on social media making sure that it's a safe place to be?
I agree, because you shouldn't have to have someone monitor them when they should be monitoring themselves,
Yes.
right? All these things, all the things that was tweeted will violate the rules and policy. We do know that. And again, if you're average and you're working 9 to 5, you're that man, you're that woman in this country out there just trying to get by, how do you feel safe knowing that the vice president is getting all of this, and yet they're not stopping it, they're not getting in front of it, they're not making any arrests, they're not knocking on someone's door and saying this is not right? So that does bring some concern. So hopefully they figure that out sooner than later.
Yeah, because it's like she is the vice president. We are everyday citizens.
Absolutely.
So if you're not protecting her,
how do we feel safe?
How do we feel safe?
We don't stand a chance.
Exactly.
All right, Atlanta's former mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is heading to the White House for a new job with the Biden administration. The former mayor sent out a tweet last night announcing she will serve as director of the White House Office of Public Engagement. The role is critical to developing President Joe Biden's policies and getting support for them. The former mayor will have access to the president and some of the most high-level planning and strategy sessions in the West Wing. She's expected to start her new job in the coming weeks.
And a week after the primary election for Los Angeles mayor, Congresswoman Karen Bass has pulled ahead of billionaire Rick Caruso thanks to mail-in ballots. A flood of late-arriving mail-in ballots for Bass is the result of the city's new law that ensures every voter receives a ballot. It's a way to bring in more voters and to focus less on in-person voting. The new results show Bass with 41% of the vote and Caruso with 38%. Now, last week, Caruso led her by 5 percentage points. Both candidates will duke it out, though, in November because neither was able to get to 51%. That's great news.
This is great news.
Yep.
Like you said, Karen Bassett about 41%, Caruso 38%. So when you do the numbers, Rick Caruso, he spent about $40 million on his campaign. $40 million on his campaign in ads and just different ways to get the word out. Karen Bass only spent about $3 million on her campaign. But it's good to know that, yes, you spent all this money, but you're not even reaching the audience. You spent all this money, not to say that he wasted his money, because his money is still going to go towards the...
he wasted his money.
He wasted his money?
Probably can write it off.
Right.
I don't know.
Right, but that's a waste of money. I mean, listen, you spent $40 million to beat someone who basically did nothing. If you think about it in the grand scheme of things, $3 million versus $40 million. But you know what else this goes to show? It just goes to show that every vote counts. Because a lot of times people are at home, they're seeing the results, and they're like, you know what, why even bother? But the fact that people still, because I was one of those people. I sent in my mail-in ballot on the day of the election, and we were getting the results the next day, and I'm like, I know they haven't gotten my ballot yet. So the fact that they counted every mail-in ballot, and now we're seeing the results of that just lets you know when you think that your vote doesn't count, it counts.
Well, yeah, the results are still trickling in to this day.
Yep.
So the other thing, too, about Rick Caruso versus Karen Bass is people need to see themselves, right? And so that's why representation is so big, because Karen Bass is a black woman. Black women, we see ourselves. Rick Caruso, he's attracting right now an older, more conservative, white, audience, which, I mean, they need to see themselves as well. So it's sad that he's spending $40 million. He's finding that audience that he needed.
They see themselves in every day. Like, we need to see ourselves, right? Because everything is geared toward the white audience, for those people that Rick Caruso represents. So, you know.
And I'm going to sum this up in one word: credibility.
Yes.
Karen Bass has all
She
of
has
that
it.
credibility, and that's the reason why the numbers are where they are right now.
Absolutely. We're going to see how this all pans out. All right, so the Buffalo grocery store massacre and the rise in white supremacy has black people buying more guns. Since the George Floyd protests in 2020, sales of guns to African Americans went up 58%. That was the highest increase among any group in the United States. Now, researchers say people who are buying weapons are making the purchases so that they can feel more safe. The National Shooting Sports Foundation says 90% of gun owners and gun stores have reported selling more firearms to black people. Of that number, 87% were sold to black women. Now, gun violence in black communities, as well as the rest of the country, has skyrocketed during the pandemic.
Former President Trump is not happy about the revelations coming out of the House committee investigating the January 6th insurrection. Trump issued a 12-page rebuttal to the testimony yesterday. Now, he is accusing Democrats of trying to distract the American people from domestic issues affecting the nation. Trump's document repeats some of the lies he pushed of the 2020 election being rigged. He continues to push that narrative, even as the American people have seen members of his campaign on video lying about allegations of massive voter fraud.
And Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis and her probe into President Trump's attempt to meddle in the 2020 election is turning part of its focus on a former publicist for Kanye West. Trevion Cootie made headlines last year when Reuters news agency reported that she went to a Georgia election worker's home to press her to confess to voter fraud. Now, Cootie lied to the worker when she said she was a crisis manager who was sent from a high-profile individual. The special grand jury could hear from Cootie early this week. The worker told Cootie that she had already been the target of harassment from Trump supporters who said she was counting fake mail-in ballots.
The U.S. Supreme Court is letting the death sentence of a Houston man convicted in the deaths of two people stand 2 years after they sent his case back to a lower court. Terrence Andrus was convicted of capital murder in the 2008 carjacking murders. Andrus's attorneys argued Texas courts did not follow the Supreme Court's 2020 ruling concerning his legal representation at his trial, as well as his sentencing. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, writing the minority, said the lower court's defiance of the Supreme Court's order to reconsider Andrus's mental health and childhood erodes confidence in the functioning of this legal system.
In related news, Tennessee's pause on executions through the end of the year could last a little longer. Governor Bill Lee halted lethal injections in April because he learned that the drugs hadn't been tested as required by law. Now, it's Tennessee's problem with its lethal injection protocols may be more problematic than first thought. Death penalty opponents say the state issues have existed at every step of the execution process for years.
And the clock is ticking for a former Tesla worker to accept a drastically reduced jury award in a racial discrimination lawsuit against the car company. Owen Diaz has one more week to decide if he will accept the $15 million settlement. U.S. District Court Judge William Orrick cut the jury's original award of $137 million. Now, the judge says the original award was excessive. He also says a quick appeal by Diaz would delay the end of the case that has already gone on for 5 years. Now, Diaz, who was an elevator operator at the Fremont, California Tesla plant, said managers ignored racial slurs and other derogatory actions from co-workers. Meanwhile, Tesla is defending itself right now in another court case against a black former worker who was complaining about the same kind of abuse.
Days after Ohio Governor Mike DeWine signed a bill allowing teachers in his state to carry guns in school, Cincinnati School Board passed a resolution banning them from being armed in class. DeWine's bill also allows school staff and teachers to carry weapons after only 24 hours of training. That's down drastically from a previous law that required 700 hours of training. The school board's resolution only allows police officers and other law enforcement personnel on campus with a weapon. The state law comes as Republican response to the Uvalde school shooting that took the lives of 19 children and 2 teachers.
A new poll says the majority of Americans are against transgender female athletes competing against girls in high school sports. The Washington Post University of Maryland survey said 55% didn't like the idea. 58% felt the same way when it came to transgender females competing with women in college and pro sports. The survey comes as Republican-led states have passed laws banning transgender athletes competing against female students in public school sporting events. Almost 70% of people polled say transgender female athletes would have a significant advantage over female athletes.
And an autopsy of Tyrese Sampson, he's the teen who died from falling at an amusement park ride in Florida, shows he had a number of severe injuries. The Orange County, Florida medical examiner says the 14-year-old had serious internal injuries, fractures to his brain, and other injuries after falling 70 feet to his death. Now, Sampson was riding the free fall ride at the Icon Park in Orlando. An examination of the ride seat showed it had been loosened and was not properly secured when Sampson got on. The autopsy showed Sampson weighed 383 pounds. The maximum for the ride was 287 pounds. An amusement park ride analysis says Sampson should have never been allowed to ride on the ride in the first place. Now, Sampson's family has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the amusement park.
A black Chicago teenager is suing Waukegan, Wisconsin police, alleging they forced him to confess to a murder he did not commit. Corinthian Burns was 15 in 2018 when Wisconsin detectives interrogated him all night about a shooting at a car show. Burns' lawyers say it ended with the young man being charged with second-degree murder as well as other offenses that would be dismissed more than a year later. Burns spent 16 months in jail until the charges against him were dropped. The federal lawsuit says police did not notify Burns' parent or guardian when he was in custody. The suit also alleges that cops ignored Burns' request for a lawyer. On top of the advocate that was there to help out started joining in on the interrogation. So the person that you think is there to kind of help you, the only person, because you haven't talked to your parents, you can't get a lawyer, haven't talked to your family, they're berating you and making you feel like, wait, did I commit this murder? And also making you feel like, I don't know, we don't know what they probably said to him.
Right.
But the person that you think is there for you turns on you. That is really scary. They also threatened him that his lawyer now is arguing that they violated his 4th and 5th Amendment rights. And honestly, 16 months is a long time, better than what we've seen, with 26 years. But why are we seeing this in 2018 and 2022? This is something that we used to see a long time ago in, 1930, 1950, like in 2022, the fact that we're seeing false confessions is really kind of scary. And in my hometown, too, it's awful to hear.
Yeah, no, the detective on this case, he has a track record of obtaining false confessions. And so now I think they're looking into him and some of the cases. But, one of the things that they told this young man, and think about, Demi, the picture that you painted, you are being berated. The person turns on you that you think that's supposed to be there to help you. They told him that if he confessed, he could go home. So what did he do?
Yeah.
He confessed.
What would any teenager do?
What would any teenager do in that situation?
Absolutely.
So it's just very sad.
And now move on for the rest of his life. We see how he look at the whole police system moving forward and the system. It's just not right. Trenton, New Jersey's first African-American police director is suing her former employer, saying she was fired because she refused to protect corrupt white cops. Sheila Cooley was fired earlier this month, just 2 years after taking the job. Her lawyers say that she refused to show preferential treatment to white police officers. The suit says the city's mayor and council members fired her after she complained about the pressure put on her to help to promote the white officers. City officials deny the charges. They say Cooley was fired for her lackluster performance.